I have the pleasure of finally getting one of my closest, most best friends in the world. I have already been reminiscing and going back down memory lane. Kelsey has been a friend ever since college, and we connected immediately. And now we're grown and moms and running our lives and doing all the things. So I introduce to you Kelsey. Welcome to the pod.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. This is so fun.
So let's put it into context because this is going to be an amazing conversation. Tell us, or I guess tell the fearless fam, who are you? Where are you located? What are you doing today? And we'll definitely go back in the timeline, but where are you at right now?
We'll time travel a little bit. My name's Kelsey Gaston. Right now, my husband and I and our two kids live in South Dakota. We moved up here a little over 2 years ago, and I am a doctor of physical therapy. So I'm in the clinic treating patients, 40 hours a week, and then chasing kids on the weekends and nights and things. But going backwards from there, I guess I went to PT school at Creighton in Omaha. And then before that was where I met Amanda at Concordia playing softball. Um, and then prior to that, or I guess kind of where we can start at if you want, I'm from a small town, O'Neill, Nebraska. Pretty small, very small, but mighty in the terms of like baseball, softball world. Like the baseball Legion teams were always good. Softball had a tradition of being very good. The classes and girls that came before us were always leading the charge. I mean, we were always class like C, like the smallest classes, but would do really well in like summer tournaments. So yeah, that's kind of where we started. And then played summer ball when I was a kiddo. Nothing competitive, nothing like club teams like they have now. Even when I was in high school, I think the closest club team was like an hour and a half away. And it was super competitive because, of course, it was the only one for hours and hours. Um, but yeah, so just kind of rec league, like ASA, I think it was softball tournaments and things in the summer. And then I was lucky enough that my sophomore year, we went before the board of our school board and got to convince them to give us softball as a school sanctioned sport. So then we got fall softball because we're in Nebraska and we play in the fall, which is silly, but here we are.
Here we are.
So yeah, my sophomore through senior year, I was able to play high school softball. And that was really great. It was a lot of fun. Still probably, no offense, Amanda and Concordia crew, but like my favorite team that I was ever on, probably those high school girls, man, we just had so much fun and made so many memories and worked our tails off and was able to play in college, which was like my goal since I was little. So yeah, it was great. It was fun. So
I
where do you
think
want to
that's
dive
something
in?
that I love this because I just had a conversation with somebody talking about this. I feel like the landscape is changing where people are starting to not put so much emphasis on high school sports and, for lots of reasons of travel organizations and the expansion of, we used to play summer ball. Like if you played a tournament in April, it was unheard of. And now these teams are playing dome ball in February and March, and like their season starts and then they go all the way through July. And I think you touched on something really cool is that there's something about high school sports, which you didn't always have that luxury of having a high school team. So you only got to play 3 years of high school, but the idea of like a common goal, you have to fight for your starting position. And some of these rosters on high school teams, a lot of the clients that I'm working with, you could have a roster of 30 kids. And I don't know how many you guys had on your roster, but when you only have 9 spots, it's nothing like travel. It's a different culture. And I feel like things are changing. But guess what high school prepares you for? College. Like that's
College. Yep.
exactly what we had to deal with in college.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And that was like, I think growing up, that was like a really integral part of like my development as an athlete was, I played all the different sports. Like I played basketball, I played softball, I did track, I played volleyball in junior high and elementary school. Like that was like one of the great things about living in such a small town is like you got the opportunity to just do everything. You know, it wasn't so competitive that if you weren't the best of the best, you didn't make a team or whatever. Like everybody just got to play. Like I did soccer when I was a kid. Like there was so many opportunities to do so many different things. And I'm a little bit biased now because I'm a physical therapist, but that's truly so good for young athletes to like do all the things and not be so specialized and doing so much of one thing all the time. Like it's so good for your development as an athlete to play multiple sports, be on multiple teams, be with multiple people. Like how much does that develop us too as like teammates to be around other people and like how do we fit in on this team versus that team? But yeah, I don't know where that started, but that's the tangent we ended on.
I think it's great. I think that's part of the reason why I struggled so much. We could just like jump into like the roast of Amanda. But I think the reason that you and I connected is I think I was that one-dimensional athlete where like I think you can squeak by in high school, but then once you get to college, I think we really bonded in the weight room because I was like, what am I doing? Which is ironic that that's what I'm doing now as, you know, I'm 33 and I just texted you my
And
PR.
I love it, hitting PRs.
The
I'm so
PRs,
excited.
I'm not even kidding. The PRs that I just texted you today at 33 years old with 3 kids and a body that is by no means anywhere near where we were in college. Like we weren't lean, mean fighting machines. My
Yep.
PRs now are bigger than my PRs when I was in my prime. And I'm like, what? How is that even possible? But, you know, form,
Right.
athleticism, knowing how your body works. And like now you're a physical therapist, like you see it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like that was kind of a something I wanted to touch on at some point in this conversation of like I know you talk a lot about like identities and like, you know, softball or being a softball player is just part of your identity. Like I think that's so important and such an important concept. Like even at 32, I'm still like learning how to deal with this and learning some of this. And I'm like, gosh, if I would have had Amanda as a coach, like how much further ahead would I be, or how much suffering would I have saved myself?
Excuse
Because
me.
it's so easy. What?
Think about like my own, like if we both would have known what we know
Right,
now, can we please have a
right,
reason? Like what?
right, right. Because it's like so much of, and we can get into this now or later, whatever. But like you know, in college, so pre-college, junior high, high school, I had like 3 or 4 concussions. I had like, you know, 4 by the time I graduated high school from softball. And then, you know, going to college, freshman year was okay. Sophomore year, fall ball, like exhibition game, got a concussion, came back, did okay. And then in the spring, our very first game down in Kansas in March or whatever it was, um, you know, got a concussion and I couldn't pass the impact test. Like it was like months before I could pass the stupid test on the computer. So my brain was clearly telling me like it's time to be done. That was super hard for me, but like looking back now, it's like because I had so much of my identity like wrapped up in being a softball player. Like I still have such one track mind or like such tunnel vision sometimes on my goals that I'm like, you know, when I was in high school and we got high school softball as an option, you know, I wanted so badly to play at the college level, but I was like, I know I'm not going to get a lot of eyes on me because we're such a small school. I don't play on a competitive travel team. Like, how am I going to get these coaches' attentions? And I knew where I lacked as an athlete. Like, I knew I needed to be faster, be more mobile. Like, I knew these things. And I had that goal and I put my head down. And Amanda, when I tell you I worked hard, like if you thought I worked hard in college, you have no idea. Like I would go out after practice and work out. I over the summertime, like I gave myself a heat stroke one day because I was out on the high school track running in the heat of the day because that's when I got off my little high school job at the grocery store. Like when I had my mindset on something, like that became my whole identity. That became my whole goal. And when I realized that that was over for me because of concussions. And I like, you know, all along through high school and college and everything, I'm like, you know, you see people have shoulder injuries like you did, or you see people tear their ACLs, or like you see these things, and I'm like, man, you know, if that happens to me, so be it. Like I wasn't afraid. I never played afraid because I was like, I can work hard. Like I'm a hard worker. That was part of my identity. Is like when the rubber meets the road, like I'm gonna outwork you, and I can recover from that when you're not you're noggin too many times. there's only so much like physically you can do to work through that. Like you just can't rehab it like you do everything else. And at that time, especially, we didn't have rehab for concussions. I mean, some places did, but no, but none of our trainers or anybody knew how to rehab that. So like, could I have come back sooner? Could I have come back better? Potentially, but like I didn't have the resources. So that was huge for me in college. And like, you know, that you were there when I was going through that. Like that was such a hard shift of like, well, who am I now that softball's over? Who am I now that 4, 5, 6 years of work up to this point is now just poof, gone, like over? You know, like, what do I do now? And I think that's where, like, you know, I'm still learning this. Like I said, it's like if younger kids and younger adults can learn to tie their identity into, you know, things that we can control. Like, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I'm a friend, I am an athlete. Not that I am a softball player, but I'm an athlete. Like, I can go do something else. I can go do a marathon. I can be a competitive weightlifter. Like, you know, athleticism doesn't end just because your sport ends. Athleticism doesn't end because of these different life changes. Like, I follow shout out Brianna Battles, I think her name is, on Instagram. Like, she's big on pregnancy and postpartum training, and she says athleticism does not end when motherhood begins. Like, every phase of our life, like, we have to learn to develop and latch on to these identities that are truly within us and within our control and serve us. Like saying like, oh, I'm a softball player and now I'm not anymore. Like that's true, but it's not true, you know? Like at my core, I'm an athlete. So I can take that with me through every phase of life. And you know, the parts of life where I've had valleys and I've struggled the most is like I've kind of forget about that part of me, or I neglect that part of my identity. And you know, everything else suffers when I'm neglecting part of like who I feel like I am at my core. So just
But I
wanted to make
think,
sure I threw that in there.
but your identity as a hard worker, when we should have hit record sooner, but I was trying to go back on that timeline to remember and when those concussions happened and when you transitioned from, you know, playing on the field to a support role on the side. To me, you were always there, and I never, that part of your identity never went away as your friend, because I knew that you were a hard worker and I knew that those
Right.
concussions were out of your control. And so like I think about who Kelsey is and who Kelsey is now, and like nothing could take away who you were as a hard worker. And like some of the things that I still think about today are those stupid wall sits. And like I've talked about this on I think on a podcast or in an email of like, if I close my eyes at the gym this week and I have to do those wall sits, if I close my eyes, I am immediately transported back to the annex, those that nasty carpet, the like beat up walls. Our whole team had to line up like a squadron and do 2-minute wall sits.
Wall sits.
And I'm
Yep.
like, if I'm gonna do a freaking 2-minute wall sit and I don't want to quit, I'm going next to Kelsey. Like KT, like don't let me quit. And I remember you like would slap my legs and you're like, Beast, don't you quit, like don't you drop. And if we dropped, we had to start over. It's like
Right.
like I was not, and I'll admit this, like when it came to things that pushed me, that was not part of my identity. Like I wasn't, and I'll admit this, like I feel like I got lucky with like talent and I was one dimensional, like I wasn't an athlete. And so I really fed off of that in you of like, how do I, you know, I think that's what connected us is like you were there in the weaknesses that I had. And like we really leaned on each other through some of those like really crappy moments. Not that Wall Street
Absolutely.
crappiest. That was by far the least of our worries of the things that we dealt with.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think you're right. Because I was thinking about that too at one point here just recently. And I was like, you know, I think that is a lot of it. Like, you know, you had the accolades and the recognition and like everything that I was like, oh my gosh, like if I could have had that in high school, or like if anybody would have recognized me like that, like I would be so confident. I would be so like swaggy. I would be like strutting around here. And but it's like that wasn't who I was either. Like, you know, it just like it's part of our story. And I think, like you said, it's part of what connected us so much. It's like you knew how to go out there and be like, I'm going to walk out on this mound and I'm going to own every single one of those people in that lineup. And like, that's a part of that I really struggled with. Like, I knew I was going to like outwork you to the core, but like, as far as like having to walk out there with your chest up and like be confident, like I didn't have that. So like you, that spark in you helped build that in me too, because like, you know, and we can talk about this if you want to, but like freshman year, I had worked so dang hard, and I purposely kept telling myself, like, you came here for a reason and you need to work hard at this, because I didn't have a starting spot when we started. Um, I had Mapes, our friend Nicole Mapes, shout out Mapes, in front of me at shortstop. And um, at that point, I was only catching like for practices and stuff. Like I caught some in high school. Senior year of high school, I switched to shortstop. I kind of went to college planning on playing shortstop because my knees were like, hey, we're kind of sick of catching. So that was my goal. That was my plan. And, I had a couple D1 offers from small schools in South Dakota, but it's like I wanted to go to Concordia because they had a record of like being good and being competitive and making it to nationals. And I'm like, I don't want to go to a D1 team just because they're D1 and get the crap beat out of us all the time. Like I'm a competitor to the core, and if I had a 2-37 record, like I was going to be mad about it. Like
Miserable.
that was not gonna do it for me just to say I was a D1 athlete. So like no shame against D1 athletes or people on those teams. They're all competitors. They all work super hard, but that's just like not where my heart was. I was just like, I would rather go somewhere and compete, like have to truly compete for a starting spot and earn it if I got it. And like compete at a high level and be competitive at a high level. So sorry, I kind of got off track now with my train of thought, but like, that was part of it too, of like me feeding that confidence from you of like, okay, I've put in the work, and as if I just keep putting in the work, like my time will come, my time will come. Like I just have to have confidence in myself and in my skills, and all of this hard work, like all of this history and this pile of proof over here that, I've worked hard and I deserve this, that it will come. And, it took a long time. I think it was against Morningside. So in the conference tournament of our freshman year, I finally got my shot. I got to go into shortstop and be in the lineup. And I don't remember exactly, but I think I did pretty good. But it just felt good to get to that point of like, looking back, I mean, I'm sure I did at the time, but like looking back, it's like, there was times I was like frustrated, but I never doubted that I would get the opportunity. And I think, like I said, it's because like if you do the things and you can look back and you say, okay, I did X, Y, Z, and I worked and gave 110% at all those things, like the results will eventually come. Like it's not going to be today, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week, but if you consistently and honestly like put in your full effort and your full umph behind every rep, behind every practice, if you truly lay it all out there, like it will come around in time, and I think that's so important. Like it's so easy to get stuck in the like sucking and the suffering, and like we all have that as like human nature of like, we start to tell ourselves stories about like, well, I'm not starting, so coach doesn't like me, or coach was critiquing me on this, so he thinks I suck at batting because I can't do this drill right or whatever. Like we all like take these things that happen that are like little finite, like factual things, like, oh, I was dropping my bat when I was swinging or whatever. But then it's like, what's the story we build behind that? And is that distracting us from where we need to go? Or is that like helping us and being constructive in where we need to go? You know what I'm saying? Like, we
Yeah.
just tend to like get so stuck in our suffering sometimes that we get so far down this story that it's like, wait a second, bring it back. Like what actually happened? What were the facts of what actually went down? And then from there, like what did I do about it? How do I respond? Because if you take that and take it for what it's worth at face value and learn from it and then build on it, it's like that's where the results will eventually come. But if we stay in that story that we tell ourselves of like, well, coach is just pissed at me, we can get so far removed, and then we start bringing teammates down with us. You know what I mean? Like we've all been on teams like that where we get so stuck in this sob story of like, oh, woe is me. I don't have the starting spot. I work as hard as everybody else. Like you can't get stuck in that zone of thinking. You can't get stuck in the sob stories and like the suffering that we tell ourselves that we're going through.
But I think that's exactly why you got those opportunities, because I think you were relentless in that. And if anyone went through some crap, like think about our core unit and think about all the variables. And we tell, we can say this now because hindsight's 2020 and we're time traveling. But I think about our freshman class, the two girls from Texas. Who else did we have? We had like a class of like 10 or 11. And then by the time we graduated, it was, us 5 or
like
6.
5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, we could hash all of this and we can like tell some hilarious stories of like, we both faced injuries. Our freshman year, was it freshman year that we had Chuck and Law? What year was that where we didn't have a coach
Yeah.
and basically our assistant coaches had to like step up? Was that
Well,
freshman?
because it was freshman year, because remember Caroline, was her name Caroline? Quit,
Yes.
like sent us an email like 3 weeks before school started, like, hey guys, sorry, goodbye, I'm
I
leaving.
met her once. I wasn't even
Yeah, same.
recruited by her because I was a Dana transfer.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
like I had just committed and then like a week later, it's like school was supposed to start in 2 weeks. That was wild.
Right.
So I
Right.
think about like, you want to talk about mentally tough, and I don't use the term mentally tough. I really don't think our assistant coaches knew what they were doing. And I would love a little bit of perspective. You tell me, Dr. Kelsey, we were doing, and I don't know why this number sticks out in my mind. We were doing 4-minute circuits, and I'm pretty sure they only gave us like 30 seconds of rest. And we did that 4 times, twice. Do you remember those days? We would get up at,
Kind of.
we had to be at the field house at 6 a.m. We would compete
Yep.
for an hour, and then we'd go down to
Yep.
the weight room and we'd lift for an hour. We did that every single
Yes.
day. And then half of us had
Yes.
8 a.m. class.
Yes.
I mean, when I'm saying like freshman year, pretty sure like freshman year was like the most buff, lean, like, and then we'd go to the cafeteria. Remember the egg lady?
Yes, I miss her. Oh my gosh, she made the best eggs.
Hey, can I get 6 over easy eggs and egg whites? Like, who eats that? We had to like refuel our bodies.
No kidding. But
Memories.
yeah, I mean, just like that, like, it's so easy as like society and humans in general, like you said, like to get stuck in the suck. And like, I think that's part of what happened with some of those girls that didn't end up graduating with us, right? They like went off and did something else or went somewhere else. It's like, if you can't figure out how to like pull yourself out of that and see, the goal way down the road, and that's what we're working for. We're not working for today, we're not working for tomorrow, we're working for 6 8 months from now. It's the people that can do that are the most successful. It's not the people that like never suffer or never struggle. Like, I've heard you bring it up before, like your little spiel that you did at the school where you talked about like, oh, so and so didn't start this company until they were 45, and Michael Jordan got cut from this team or that team or whatever. And I think sometimes we're so quick to like hear those stories and kind of gloss over the messiness in the middle. Like, we're just like, oh, he was cut from his high school team, but now he's like the greatest of all time. Well, you don't think there was a month or 2 months or 3 months in there probably where he was at home and he was upset and he was crying and he was thinking this wasn't worth it? It's like we all go through stuff like that in our lives. And like, we've been there for each other through a lot of this stuff, right? Like, life is hard and crappy. The crappiest of crappy things can happen. And it's like, we need that time to process, and we need that time to be in the messiness and be in the suffering. But it's like no one writes history books about the people who stay in that area, right? Like, you have to latch onto those identities, like we were talking about earlier. Like, who am I truly at my core? Like, who do I want to be? Or maybe it's not even somebody who I've been before. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody that's stuck in this suffering cycle of just like staying down and the world kicking the crap out of me? Or am I going to like figure out how to be somebody who stands up and kicks down the door and says, I'm coming out of this hole. Like, I am not staying here anymore. And I think that can, I mean, at any level, right? Like high school or college or whatever, like,
Yeah.
sorry to break it to you, but life kind of sucks. Like life is unfair at times. Like
Yeah.
it's great and it's beautiful and there's amazing things that happen too, but you have to get through some of that sucky stuff first, or sometimes along the way, like in the in between. And like I said, I think all the cliches and all of the like happy thoughts and happy things in the world, it's like that doesn't help when you're stuck in that hole. So like when
Yeah.
you're in that hole, you have to figure out what is going to help pull you out. And like I said, it's not for tomorrow, it's not for the next day, sometimes it's not for a while down the road, but it's like if you can find that identity and act as if that person that you want to be, or that skill that you want to have, and build those little deposits every day of adding up to be that person, it's like we can get through a lot. We're resilient human beings.
But I think that's what made our freshman class so freaking strong. And then I was even thinking about
Right.
you, like Kelsey, we're not talking like 8 months of suffering. Like we suffered for 3 years and had coaching changes and battles to get to our senior year where we did make a national berth. And I think about like
Right.
when Todd came in, we were all scared out of our minds, and like he worked us harder than we ever worked. But like I and you know, I can say this with an open mind too, of like our grade, like our core unit, like we when we were at practice and when we were in the vans and when we were at lifting, like we had each other's backs. We may not have been like the best friends off the field, but like what made us so successful is exactly what you're talking about, is like the girl to my right and the girl to my left, like we're in this and we're in this suckiness, like we're gonna lean on each other, like, and then we can go.
Right.
What did Shelby and Baldwin used to do? You guys would all like pile into one dorm room and like we would play video games or like watch movies
Yeah.
and just like
Yeah.
mentally unplug.
Unwind.
Shelby used
Yeah.
to watch Fox and the Hound, and like, why are you watching sad movies? It's like you just have to like, we're in this sadness together.
Right.
But
Trauma
would you do it
bonding.
again? That's the question, is like, even with everything that we went through, and I'll tell all of my college girls right now that I work with, I will be the first one to tell you that college is really, really freaking hard. And in the same breath, I would go back. I would always go back.
1,000%.
I would relive it
Thousand percent.
again and again and again.
Right. And it's one of those things like maybe we're just far enough removed now, but well, I think even at the time I was like that way. Like I just constantly had it in the back of my head of like that little 12-year-old audacious little girl inside of me, like who watched the College World Series on the TV for the first time and started listening to the commentators and talking about how these girls are working out. And I was like 13, 14, and I'm looking up like how to train like a softball player. Amanda, did I send you a Snapchat of this? A few months ago, my kids were playing in my parents' basement. So now my children are playing in my old room and stuff where I grew up. And they found a notebook, like an old like diary, like one of those fuzzy, like outside ones. You know what I'm talking about? It's like
Yeah.
purple, fuzzy. I think I got it from like Girl Scouts or something. So I like opened it up and they were like, "Oh, mommy, what's this say?" And there was like a date on it. And I did the math and I would have been like 13, I think. And there was workouts written in the notebook
Dang,
because I
Kelsey.
remember like I would watch college softball and I would watch college basketball and they would talk about like the training and the stuff that they did. And like I would go to the school library and find like magazines because the internet wasn't a thing. We didn't have a computer at our house yet
Yeah.
because we're old now. But like any sort of information like that, I was so into it because I was like, man, I got to make this happen. Like I just in my head, I was 10 feet tall and there was no stopping me. Like I was going to make this happen. So maybe that's part of like, maybe when, if you have some girls that are struggling in college stuff right now and making that adjustment, it is a huge adjustment. But like also you have to think about like who started this dream? Like
Yeah.
who is that little girl in there that had this big audacious dream that maybe a lot of people said would never happen? Because that was me. I had a basketball coach in high school that said like you're never going to get an offer anywhere, you know? And I wore that chip on my shoulder and I was not going to let that win. So it's like as much as it sucks in the moment, like I feel like maybe for that reason I had a better attitude maybe at times, not all the time. I'm not saying I definitely wasn't
Yeah.
happy about waking up at 6 a.m. all the time. It definitely wasn't fun all the time. But I think I just had like such a Like, I just appreciated it so much more than some of our teammates, and especially, like, a lot of the girls that ended up quitting, because it's like, for them, it was just like the expectation. It was just like, that's the next step. Like, you're on this
Right.
super good travel ball team, so you go play college somewhere. But their heart wasn't in it. For me, my heart was always, always, always in it. Like, even on the days that I didn't want to be there, even on the days that we were dog tired, even on the days that we were banged up and hurt, like, I just was like, this is all I wanted. Like, this is all I ever wanted. So
Yeah.
why am I not gonna like enjoy it even though it sucks, and enjoy every second of it and enjoy who I'm doing it with, you know?
Yeah. Amen. I would say for me, I really experienced that for the first time of like, and again, like I could fall into both categories. I did have the accolades in high school. Like I was the best pitcher. Like I was on the stat board. Like I broke every record in high school. And so my freshman year, and I've talked about this on the podcast, I got rocked. Like my identity, my ego, my confidence, like it got shattered freshman year because I just assumed that it would be just like high school. And then, when I was giving up home runs and not getting that starting position as a pitcher, I was like, what? This doesn't happen to AB. What's going on here? And then I made it mean something about me, you know?
Right, right, right. And there it goes back to our identities, right? Like, your identity wasn't just in like, I'm AB and I'm a strong athlete and I'm also really good at this position. It was like, no, I'm AB the pitcher, and that's it. I rock
Who
it. You know
breaks
what I mean?
records?
And then it's
Yeah,
like,
who strikes
as soon as
everybody out.
there's as soon as there's a little bit of erosion in that, it's just like, we are sitting here like, well, now what the heck do we do? Like, this is so foreign to me, you know? And I think that's where a lot of our teammates and stuff struggled at times, because it's like they were the best of the best, and now you're playing with everybody's best of the best, and it was really
Right.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I just talked about
absolutely.
that with one of my clients out of Georgia. And I gave her that perspective shift of like, I want you to imagine, I always use the analogy of four-hole hitter. I want you to take the four-hole hitter from every high school within a 100-mile radius, and I want you to put it on a super team. That's college. And her
Right.
eyes got really big and she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. And I said, well, how many of your girls from your high school team went on to play college? And like think about those statistics, right? And
Right.
like
Right.
I wish somebody would have told me that as I'm like
Right.
watching home run. There was I think it was against Peru. We need to get Nat on the podcast. I remember home run. Why this one sticks out to me. It was like a flat curveball, and I saw that home run, and I didn't know this rule. It like hit the yellow part of the fence, the like fence cap, and then it bounced over. I was like, "There's no way that's a home run. That's embarrassing. Like this is so stupid." Yep, umpire's going whoop with his fingers, and I just remember turning and looking at Nat, and she just like shrugged her shoulders. She's like, "What do you want me to do?" Like, you gave up the home run.
I can see
You're
her. I can see her now. Like,
yeah, like figure it out.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
What
Oh
memory sticks
man.
out to you? Like what memories?
Oh man. I don't know.
Do you remember when we got in trouble for moving the bench? Did I
Moving the
make you do that
bench.
with me? Remember our dugouts were so tiny, and we thought if we moved the benches out of the dugout, we like hauled one of the benches over to right field or left field.
Oh,
And the city emailed our coach and was
at
like,
Plum Creek?
at Plum Creek, did I rope you
How
into
do I
that?
not remember this?
We'll have to text
No.
Baldwin or Shelby, or maybe it was Topol. I don't know. But we like moved the benches because we thought, well, fine, it's, now they expanded. They've renovated the fields now, but we got in trouble with the city, and I'm pretty sure Frank made us run for that.
Maybe. I don't know. My memory's not so good, remember? Too
I
many
know.
concussions.
Too many. Uh
Oh man.
okay, so Arizona. Do you remember when you got into med school?
Yep.
That was
That was pretty
awesome.
crazy. Because it was like 5 a.m. or something. Like, it was something super early. It was probably not
Was
that
it
early. It
because of
was
the
like
time
6
change?
a.m. because of the time change. And so it was like 8 a.m. back home, because remember, when we went to Arizona, they don't do like daylight savings either. So it went from being like 1 hour to 2 hours difference. So it
Mm,
was like, as soon as the admissions office had opened up, I was like getting these phone calls from an Omaha number. And I was like, I don't know who this is. I'm trying to sleep. It's 6 a.m. Like, we're on spring break. We have to be up in a couple hours to go warm up or whatever, anyways. I'm like, who is calling me? And then they finally leave a message, and you happen to be out on the balcony. And remember those like gardeny, like there was the hotel was like this big square, and like in the middle was like a garden and a fountain, and it was all
Yeah.
pretty, and the sunshine was coming in. And I like take my phone out there because I'm trying to be quiet as everybody's sleeping. And it was like somebody from the admissions office at Creighton, and I was like, oh my gosh, Kelsey, like you filled out your application wrong. You screwed something up, and they can't, like they
That's what
needed
you
more
thought in that
information.
moment? I knew immediately. I was like, you like pointed to your phone, and I remember looking, it was like, oh my gosh, like
No, that was before. So, like when I was listening to the voicemail, it was like, oh, this is so and so from the admissions office at Creighton. Like, we just had a few things we needed to talk to you about. And so I was like, oh my God, like, what did I say in my interview? Or like, what did I screw up? Like that they, and then when I called her, she was like, oh, I was like, oh yeah, I needed to talk to admissions. Like, they had some questions or something for me. She's like, who is this? And I was like, Kelsey. And she was like, oh, she's like, we just wanted to offer you a spot in our class. And I was like, and that's when I was like,
yeah,
like
immediately
trying
you
to
were
like
trying to be quiet
silently
because
it's like
everyone else is
running
sleeping.
laps running laps along the second floor of this hotel. Yeah, that was pretty fun. That was legit. I think
Senior year
honestly,
by
like,
far. Like that
oh
spring
yeah,
break trip, we went down to Arizona, that spring break trip. We were undefeated for like the first 12 games. We went undefeated on spring break, and then we got home, and then we continued our undefeated streak. Like that, we knocked off like Grandview. They were like ranked. We played somebody else that was ranked. And like, I think senior year is like that moment of like, you got into med school, like this was the last run. We were playing for each other. We had been
right.
coaching changes. Like Todd was our coach.
Todd was there and he was rocking it. Yeah,
It's like, this is it. Like we had a blast.
yeah, it was so fun. Honestly, I think I've always been bad at remembering like the scores or the records
Oh
or
yeah.
like the like minute details. Like I don't know what zone I would go to in my mind when I was playing, but it was just like next play, next play, next play, next play. And you could ask me about like 4 innings ago and I might not even remember. Like it was,
Yeah.
I just like, I don't know, compartmentalize it or something. But like the thing that I always remember the most was like the van rides. Like, you know what I mean? Like you said, our core group in that stupid van singing Mr. Brightside or Ironic or whatever the case is, like it was just always so fun. And like you said, it's like, of course we suffered plenty together and there was plenty of downtimes. And I'm sure there was plenty of games where we got our tail kicked when we shouldn't have, or we lost a close one when we shouldn't have. And there was a lot more somber, rides home in the van too. But I
Okay.
think you
So
just have to go through all of it.
now as we post this podcast, I'm going to have to go hunt for the photo of us sleeping in the van. Also,
There's
I just
probably several of them.
It was when, okay, first of all, if you guys didn't want to look it up, there was an app called Vine. It was like the pre-TikTok app, and we were doing the WAP and like all these things. Do you guys remember when you put Pitch Perfect? I had not seen Pitch Perfect. Do you remember the opening scene of Pitch Perfect? And I had not watched it yet. And all of you guys were turned around in the van watching me watch this movie for the first time. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yes, vaguely.
It was the puke scene.
And the puke scene.
And then I'm in the van and I'm going, oh, and everyone turns around and goes, puke scene.
I thought you were going to bring up that stupid, like, call me maybe or whatever, with all the busloads of baseball boys. Yeah.
That was like the first viral video.
Yeah, probably. No, but I think that's like you said, like all the wins and losses, and yeah, and going to nationals was super fun and super cool, and I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. But it's like you got to enjoy the ride too. You know what I mean? Like quite literally, the band rides that never end for us. Like those times being with your teammates, like that's what I treasure more than anything. That's what I remember more than anything, for whatever reason.
And look at us now. We were bridesmaids in each other's weddings, and
yeah, we were.
All the things. We're gonna have to pull up some cool photos. Well, this was really fun. We should do more of these. We need to get Nat on the podcast. We should get the whole crew together.
I was just thinking that the other day, like last week, I was like, man, I feel like every year we talk about it, like the spring, we need to have like a reunion game or something that we all go to Plum Creek together and watch. Yeah, but that's
the thing is like, we don't even need to play. Like we should just go.
No, just to watch.
I mean? To watch. Todd wanted us to actually scrimmage. He wanted us to like scrimmage the youngins. I'm like, no.
Okay, that would be really fun though. I would do that. You wouldn't do that? That
Well,
would be
okay,
so fun.
now that I'm more in shape, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a couple years ago,
Absolutely.
after having babies, I would have told you like, heck no, I ain't blowing my
Or
AC.
play like wiffle ball. That would be fun.
Yeah. I
Old
did
lady
went
game.
to Concordia last year and I like checked out the annex. The annex, for all of you guys that want to know, is literally like an outhouse, not an outhouse. It's literally like a tin building. It's like
Quonset. It's a Quonset building.
it's a Quonset building with one door. That's not even, or no, actually, there are
It had 2 doors.
we weren't allowed to open them. It's like stinky cages with like really old carpet. It's the best way
It's still there. Do they still use it?
If they still use it, it looks
Crazy.
exactly the same except for new nets. That's the only thing
I
that's
was gonna say,
new nets.
more than pictures of whatever we were just talking about, we need pictures of the annex. That's what we should put up.
Post
That's the burning question on everyone's mind, I'm sure of it.
Yeah. All good things. Get me some ice. And a trainer. I will never post pictures of him on my Instagram. Inside jokes. You got to get back to work.
I will never forget that quote right there. Probably ever.
Those are some weird years. Bloody Mary ferry boat.
I don't get the rest.
No, we're not even going to go into that one. We're not even going to go into that one. When we went to San Francisco. All right.
Oh, yeah.
It's Julia's birthday today. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Julia. I love Julia.
Shout out to Jules.
My 14 baby. I don't know why I just said 15. We shared the number. She got it when I couldn't take it anymore.
Well, so we went to San Francisco. Long story short, a bunch of kids from the Midwest. Julia was from the Bay Area, and we go, "Hey, Jules, what are we supposed to wear? You know, we don't want to look like sore thumbs in San Francisco." And she goes, "No big deal. Just wear some jeans and a cute top." We're like, "All right, we got this." Remember when we used to like roll our jeans into capris? That was like the thing.
I could never do that because I was too short.
Oh, okay. We all have like just Nebraska blue jeans. And here comes Julia. She walks out to the vans in purple, acid washed, like cool jeans. And we're like, those are not jeans. It's like you're from the Bay Area. We all look like a bunch of hicks that have.
Those are like your party pants. These are my pitch and hay pants. That's the difference.
Ooh. Memories.
Oh man, that was fun though. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, we went a lot of places. So, well, Kelsey, this was amazing.
Yeah.
You do have an Instagram. We can post your Instagram and relive the glory days. Kelsey, I just have loved just all the evolutions of our lives and between playing and motherhood and business and jobs and states. I love you.
Absolutely. Ditto. Couldn't have done it without you. Any of it.
Yeah. Well, podcast fam, till next time.